We go. This is the original Friday Night Vibe. I'm T Cash, hip hop, healing, health from the Northern California perspective. Online, on the air, 89.5 FM, KPOO, the soul of San Francisco, rapsnacksradio.com. Shout out KBZ for Sheezy, as well as KPOO.com. Listen, right now we are going to open this all the way up. 5 or 10 minutes max, but let's talk about it, party people. You know, Friday Night Vibe, Bay Area, Sacramento, Northern California region, Stockton, all the way down to Bakersfield. You know, we all have something in common. And the bittersweet commonality that we have as a collective community of artists and everybody in between is that in order for us to thrive, like beyond what it is that we do, where we do it, in order for us to thrive beyond that threshold, we got to get up out of here. Meaning whether it's to just post up and be somewhere else just to soak up the atmosphere of what people are doing, how they do it as it relates to if they want to or not purchase my material, my product, be a part of my brand. Some people disagree. They say, well, you know, with the internet, you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to go anywhere until it's time to go somewhere. And that's probably where the influence behind this video segment comes, is at a certain point, it's time to leave. But if you are an artist, a producer, videographer, whoever, tour manager, if you're a person in that realm, it's time to leave, but it's difficult because you have children, because you have a family to raise, because you have responsibilities that could be compromised or strained if you're not physically present. This is for you. This might be for you. This is for you, and this might be for you. And the reason why I say might is because for some people, it's just, it's deal or no deal. You're not gonna, your mind is already made up. You're not going anywhere. You can't go for the sake of the family. And that is correct. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a segment that I already produced called Being the Dad That I Wish That I Had. And it speaks a lot to that. Before I got to that point, there were 2, maybe 3 instances where four, where I actually did go on the road. And it was difficult. But half of it could have been avoided. Here are the 3 things, maybe 4, definitely 3, that I think if you need to go on the road and you have specifically children at home, with respect to like your spouse or your partner or your co-parent, but if you have children at home and you need to go on the road, these are the 3 to 4 topics, tips, suggestions that you could use to make that as efficient, as effective as possible as a parent in the lives of your children. All right. So the first one being, reevaluate if you really have to go. You know what I'm saying? Reevaluate if you really have to go, man. And this is me being devil's advocate and angel's advocate. The devil's advocate is like, well, do you really have to go? Right? Because again, that 2 weeks, 1 month might seem like nothing in your world. But the last time we all checked as parents, you know how long a day at school is for your child, a day at daycare or at grandma's house if you got them in grandma's and not in daycare. 1 day, 2 hours, any time away from you, it could be an eternity for kids, because their minds are definitely biologically not as developed as ours, but just on the social spectrum of things, you know, they haven't lived through what we've lived through. So their world is just themselves, maybe the world outside of themselves immediately, which 100% of it revolves around you, because they don't know what's going on unless you tell them. You do it. You don't do it. You might involve them. You might not. Other than that, that's their world. So they won't understand the concept of, you know, flush the toilet after you use the bathroom, let alone the concept of time and time zones. You know what I'm saying? And how to manipulate time like an adult. That's our job. And that's probably the devil's and angel's advocate definition of why I'm saying it the way I'm saying it. If you do not have to go, reevaluate that. Do you have to go? If you don't have to go, don't go, right? Start there, number one, because you can't unlive. They can't unlive any of that time when you were away. And if you run the risk of you not being there at a time where you should be there and you know you should be there, then again, it gets messy on the back end. You got to clean it up on the back end. You can do that, but who wants to do that? And there's greater chance of you not needing to do so much cleanup work. Number one, if you avoid it, or if you're on the front end of a situation, but definitely not on the back end of something happening while you're away. Okay. Hear me out. If you still think, well, I don't know what you're talking about, brother. Why are you making this segment? Bloop, 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 bloop. Becoming the dad that I wish I had. Becoming the dad I wish that I had. That's the segment prior to this. Please go look it up. It can give you a lot of context to why. That is the first of three tips and examples. Number two, utilize the internet. Utilize the internet. Two ways to do it. It's two ways to do it. You can video call, text, video message in real time, meaning if you just finished sound check, you're about 3 time zones away. So let's say we're in California, you're on the East Coast. It's 6 o'clock sound check in Brooklyn, and you have a window of time to check in with the little ones or big ones at 3 o'clock California time. Please do that. Please take 5 minutes out of your regimen, out of your schedule. I don't want to sound bullish, but don't tell me you don't have 5 minutes, because if you don't have 5 minutes for your kids, but you got 30 days for some music, hey, the Friday Night Vibe may not be your platform. You know what I'm saying? So let's just get that out the way. If you have more time for everybody else, but the people that you need to have time for, this may not be your segment. I'm going to go out on a limb and be sarcastic and say, that's not you. But just in case you needed to hear it from me, there you go. 5 minutes, 10 minutes between sound check, whatever you're doing. It doesn't have to be sound check, but between what you're doing on the road and what's going on back home, any gaps in time, utilize that and check in the moment. Let's say you can't do that. Pre-record anything you can, video message, text, voice recording, and send it back home. Send it to your partner, send it back to a spouse, a family member. Make sure it gets to those kids. Make sure that you are present as possible, even though you're not there physically in that moment with them. Here's an example of it on the other side. Let's say that you really don't have the time. You don't have the time. You got sound check and then this radio interview, and then you got to go back to the hotel and change, or you got to go back to wherever you're at and change. And then before you go to the venue to perform, you need to meet with some dudes who said that they needed a verse from you, or you need to meet with somebody who wanted to do an interview that was different from the radio station you went to. You need to do this, but you also need to be present for your family back home, for your kids back home. That leads to number two. Pre-record, well, not number two, 1.5. Okay. You can record your messages on the back end whenever you can, and then send that back over, and they're there. Just in general, no matter when they get them, that's when they get them. But the reality is the time frame may not be as ideal as possible. So what? Said the cat in the hat. Go ahead and do it anyway. Because again, the idea is, even though you're not there physically, your presence is still there socially within the circle. All right. That then leads into number two, for real. Kind of like an adaptation of number one. If you are in that realm of being on the road, communicating with the family, with the kids remotely, continue to remind them that this is temporary. Name the day you will be back. Talk about things that you're going to do when you get back. Talk about what you did before you left, and talk about things that you're going to do after you get back, because you want to pretty much circumvent that void in absence, that void of presence. Excuse me. You want to circumvent that. You don't want to sit there and talk about everything you're doing while you're away, unless they ask. But even if they ask, don't go into that. Talk about them. This is their time. You want to know what they did, what they're doing, what you guys are going to do when you get back, what you did before you left, and then what you do when you're going to get back, and plan it like that. You really want to take away the bite and the sting from the fact that you're physically not there. Okay. A little bit of word of advice, words of wisdom, word to the wise. It gets better as they get older, but if they're like little kids, it really helps if you keep the focus on them. All right. Last but not least, I think for today, and this is done. And this is very crucial. Make sure that when you talk to your little ones or big ones, teenagers, right? When you are gone, continue to parent as if you were there. Why? Because you're a parent. You know what I'm saying? And it doesn't matter where you are physically, you're going to be their parent anyway. They may not say it, but they really do want you to remain constant and present in all shapes and sizes of the terms, meaning if it was their day to clean that sink, if it was their day to make up the bed, if it was their day to make sure that that sister got to watch Blue's Clues, and then they get to watch what they want to watch on the tablet, remind them of that. You better be mindful. That's what today is, Tuesday. So you remember, because even though a child might express how they feel in these like detailed terms specifically, unless there's some like really deep trauma and the need to really like go deep, it's going to be surface level. And there are things underneath the surface that only an adult, a functional, healthy, present adult can dig up and identify and support. So I'll use an example of this, and then we'll close out, because this is not meant to be super long. It's just meant to be, right? Because this might be a little heavier for those of us who are really there and want to be present while we're out on the road and on tour. Okay, so here's what works. The idea is the child may not say, or the children may not say, we miss you, and we're scared, and we're confused, and we don't understand why you have to be away. But we trust that you're going to come back. And even though it's difficult, we're still going to show up and continue to trust and be confused and scared, because we know you're going to come back. That's really scary for us. And we might be harboring some anger and resentment if we're a little older, maybe preteens, adolescents. You don't have to necessarily take it that far and word it the way that I'm wording it, right? But hey, man, if you can infer, you know your kids better than me. If you know that is something that might be coming up for them, just in the energy that they're giving off through the screen, on the video call, the lack of engagement when you talk to them on the phone, or the 2-word texts that usually are whole paragraphs when you're back home, that's a cue for us as adults to chime in and this is the kind of the closing out of this part of the end of the segment, right? That is the part where we speak to it as if they brought it up, and then we concluded as if we understand and we are going to move forward like so. All right. So here's an example. We're out of here after that. You're talking to I'm going to use a specific example, and hopefully my wife won't roll her eyes at me when she sees this. when I was when I was on tour, talked to my daughter. Hey, what you doing? She was little at the time. She was maybe 5, 3. You know what I'm saying? 5, 6 at the most, 4 or 5. We say, hey, hi, what are you doing? Oh, nothing. We're talking, we're laughing, we're joking. And then I said, what are you going to have for dinner? And then she would say something like, mac and cheese and peas. And then she would say, I don't like mac and cheese. I don't like when mommy cooks it. For me, at least, that was a cue for, I wish you were home to cook, because that's what I do when I'm home, right? I not a thing at all. That's what I do. I cook. So I'm not going to say, well, I know that you're really frustrated at me being gone, sweetie, because your mind is, I'm not going to do all that. I just simply put it out there and say, hey, I know, but when I get back, we'll get back to all this other stuff that you get to eat when I'm there. And you also get to eat all of the cool stuff that mommy makes while she's there, right? Because that's true and correct. But it's also true and correct in the sense that, I'm just recognizing what she might or might not be feeling. The key wisdom in this, I believe, is might not be feeling. If that's the case, you still win because you just address something in a really positive manner. You feel me? I know you do. I think we are done for today when it comes to this. Might be back with a part 2, depending on the feedback. But that is the end of this segment and why it is appropriately titled Ways to Parent Your Kids, Your Dependents, Your Loved Ones While Being Away on Tour. All right. It's the original Friday Night Vibe. I'm T Cash. Hip hop, health, healing from the Northern California perspective. 89.5 FM, the soul of San Francisco. KPOO. KPOO.com, Rap Snacks Radio. Until next time, party people, right on.